Fine, thank you. Welcome everybody to the Cape Bird Club's course for beginners. The iconic bird of the Cape Bird Club is the Cormorant, which is more commonly known as the Cape Sugarbird. In this photograph on your screen, you can see a flock of them are mobbing me. The owner of the garden I'm visiting frequently fills their feeder with sugar water, and these birds are hoping that I'm going to come to them with some sugar water too. A great way to attract birds to your garden is to feed them, but please don't overdo it, as they can become very demanding. As Priscilla has told you, I am Helen Fenwick, and I love birds. I've been a bird watcher for nearly 30 years, but I still don't consider myself to be an expert. In this course, I will share with you the little bit of knowledge of birds that I do have, and I will give you some tips on how to observe and identify the birds that you do see. My friend and mentor, Heather Howell, for many years, as Priscilla told you, facilitated the Cape Bird Club's beginners course. And much of what I am sharing here, I learned from her, as when I was a teacher at her school, I had to teach the children birds, although Heather did most of the preliminary work and I did the classroom work. For this presentation and the one to follow, I am using free clip art from Vecteezy on the internet. I'm using my and my husband's photographs and photographs from the Cape Bird Club's webpage. And I thank the photographers for that: Otto Schmidt, Daryl De Beer, Lynette De Beer, Leslie Buss, and Derek Longgreg. Bird watching is really a hobby for life. Birds are everywhere, and you can watch them in your garden. You can watch them while out walking or while driving. You also do not have to be particularly physically fit to do so. Bird watching brings you in touch with nature. We're all curious about the world around us. And while bird watching, you will learn new things, not only about birds, but also about other aspects of nature. The planet needs people to be aware of the environment and the need to conserve. And most birders reduce, reuse, and recycle. Bird watching is good for your spiritual, mental, and physical health. But just be careful. You might be so absorbed in following a bird that you forget to look where you are going, and you could trip and fall and hurt yourself. Or if you spot a bird while driving, you might take your eyes off the road and crash into a fellow road user. But jokes aside, communing with nature lifts the spirit. Fresh air clears your head. Walking is more fun than working out at the gym, and all the fresh air and exercise will make you sleep better at night. Bird watching hones your sensory skills. You will learn to become still and to watch and listen. You'll become more aware of sounds and develop excellent observation skills, making you more aware of your surroundings and giving you a fresh appreciation for the miracle of creation. You'll meet other like-minded, interesting people no matter where you go, because birds and bird watchers are everywhere. Your holidays will never be the same again. They will revolve around birds, and you will become an eco-tourist. Many of us like to collect things: stamps, coins, teddy bears, dolls, model trains. The list goes on. Bird watchers don't collect live birds or dead birds, or nests or eggs, but most keep lists of the birds that they see. Of course, this is not an essential part of this hobby, and some bird watchers don't keep lists at all. But it is fun to keep lists, especially of those you see in your garden or in places that you regularly visit. It's a record of how things can change and how each visit can be quite different. On a life list, you would tick birds that you see for the very first time, and you might record the date and place where you saw it. You'd record the date and place where you saw it. Every hobby has its own jargon, and bird watching is no exception. I'm going to just show you a few words that you might hear once you start entering the birding fraternity. The bird nerd. He is an intellectual type whose nerdiness revolves around birds. They are usually young men, but there are many older ones and women too. They probably started birding as children and drove their parents insane by their obsession with feathered creatures. They usually wear glasses, have binoculars at the ready, carry a notebook to draw and record their sightings, and gather in groups to brag about the latest rare sighting. They're enthusiastic, friendly, and very knowledgeable. When you come across one, perhaps on an outing or when you're in the field, stick close to him because he will definitely find the birds for you. He will be happy to identify the tricky ones, and he will let you look through his scope too. Now, the twitcher is an extreme bird nerd. This species is single-mindedly determined to get as many birds on his list as he can. He tends to look down on lesser beings and is extremely competitive. He will drop everything and even risk losing his job or his girlfriend to chase a bird he has not yet got for one of those various lists of his. Some bird nerds will be tempted to do this, but reason usually prevails, and only if they can, without breaking the bank or ruining a relationship, will they race off to find a special bird. Excuse me. Why are they called twitchers? Well, when they see a rare or interesting bird, they tend to twitch with excitement. A birder or a bird watcher is someone like you and me. Interested and enthusiastic about birds, would certainly enjoy finding a special along with the bird nerds and the twitchers, but we are not terribly competitive in this pursuit. The jizz is the overall impression given by the general shape, movement, and behavior of a species, rather than any particular feature. Bird nerds and twitchers can often identify a species even with only a fleeting or distant view on jizz alone. That's why stick to them whenever you can. LBJ stands for Little Brown Job, and you will often hear this term used for a small drab bird that is difficult to identify. Now, a tick is not a little insect that sucks your dog's blood, but a bird that you have listed or ticked off a list. The megatick is, of course, a rare bird that you manage to see and tick off your list. And a lifer is a bird that you've seen for the very first time in your life and is now a new tick. If you dip on seeing a bird, it means everybody else saw it, but you did not. Or you're in a particular area where you expect to see a bird, but you don't. So you dip on seeing that special species. You can bird anywhere and at any time with no special equipment other than your own eyesight. But there are some things that will enhance your birding experience. The most essential thing that you need is a pair of good binoculars. And in a minute, I will discuss these in more detail. You will also need a field guide. There are many excellent ones on the market, but I will tell you about those later on too. Then it's a good idea to get a checklist of the area you are visiting. Most nature reserves and game reserves hand these out for free. This helps you know what birds you are likely to find in the area you are visiting. African BirdLife is the magazine put out by BirdLife South Africa, and they provide a free one of all the birds in South Africa in their first issue of the year. This is one over here. Wear a hat And don't forget the sunscreen. And make sure you wear comfortable shoes for walking on various terrains like grassy, rocky, pebbly, and wet. Clothing should be comfortable. Also, you can bring a backpack to carry an extra jersey or jacket, water, a snack, and possibly a small first aid kit. You might want to bring a pencil and a notebook too, but it's really not essential. Now, let's talk about binoculars. The most expensive outlay you may have is the purchase of a new pair of binoculars. The more intricate the components and the more coatings a pair of binoculars has will determine the price. You definitely pay for what you get, and it is worth researching different brands and comparing specs and prices. I'll just briefly explain the basics of what you will need for bird watching. There are two styles to choose from. Pyroprism binoculars produce bright images. Roof prism binoculars are compact and more durable. If you already own the more old-fashioned pyroprism, they should be fine. But for bird watching, the lighter roof prism binoculars would be better. In this slide, you will see the different parts of the binoculars, and I will try to explain to you how to focus and use your binoculars. At the bottom of the barrel, you have your objective lenses, and these determine the depth of field. The ocular lenses will determine the magnification. The center focusing wheel, you will adjust according to how far away the object is. Over here, you will have the diopter, and I'll explain a bit more about the diopter in a minute. And then you also have the eye cups on these lenses, and I'm going to talk to you about those now as well. These are the eye cups, and the ones on this pair of binoculars are wind up and wind down. So if you wear glasses, you wind the cups up. If you don't wear glasses, you will wind the eye cup up. If you do, you wind them down so that you have more comfort on your eyes when you are focusing through your binoculars. If your binoculars have a rubber eye cup, those can be folded down. So if you wear glasses, to make your binocular experience more comfortable. Now, let's have a look at the diopter. The diopter is a control knob designed to let you compensate for differences between your two eyes. Once you set the diopter, then the two barrels should stay in proper relation to each other. From then on, you can focus just by turning the central focusing knob. What you need to do is pull the diopter out and set it to 0. And there'll be a little line showing you where 0 should be, and you would turn the knob until your 0 is on that line. Then you focus your binoculars, close the one eye of the other that's at the other lens, and focus the diopter until you get a perfect image. Then you push the diopter in to lock it, and it will now be set for your eyes. When you look through your binoculars, you should see one clear circle, not two. If you see two, adjust your binoculars by pulling the barrels further apart or pushing them closer together until you get a single circle. Just at this point, want to tell you that I will be sending everybody in the course a set of notes after the second lecture, and a lot of what I'm covering now will be in those notes. So if I'm going too fast, don't worry, it will be repeated in the notes. Very brief, but point by point. Now we'll talk a little bit about magnification. In the first frame, you will see what a bird looks like with the naked eye. So that's your your naked eye view of a bird that's in the sky quite far away. If you have a camera or binoculars with an 8 times magnification, this is how it will look. And that would be the 10 times magnification and so on. Now for binoculars, you might be tempted to look at a pair that has got a greater than 10 times magnification, but that would not be a good idea, because if it has that much of a magnification in a pair of binoculars, they become very heavy. And when you're holding them, your hands could shake and you wouldn't really get a clear view. It is better to stick to them, which I'll go into a little bit more in a minute, 8 times to 10 times magnification. You could also, before I tell you that, when you are shopping for binoculars, make sure you try them out in the shop first. You must make sure that the image is clear and that there's no color aberration. If the image is surrounded by a color outline, it will mean that the lenses are inferior. You also might be tempted to buy a good pair of binoculars with a 10 by 25, with your magnification 10 and your depth of field 25. And it's very handy to carry around in a handbag. But for a better birding experience, you would need to get a pair of binoculars with 8 by 32 or a 10 by 42. The 8 is the magnification, and the second number, the 32 or the 42, will indicate the diameter of the front lens, and the larger the diameter, the wider the field of vision. So just briefly, get a magnification between 8 and 10, and a depth of field between 32 and 42 is the very best for birding. Now, do your research and consider a few things before purchasing a new pair of binoculars. It's best to get the wind down eye cups. You may not wear glasses now, but binoculars last for a very long time. And as you get older, I can assure you, you are going to need binoculars that you can use with your glasses on, rather than having to take them on and off. Also, they work better if you wanted to keep your sunglasses on. Handle the binoculars in the shop before purchasing. Make sure they're not too heavy for you. It would in any case be wise to get a harness rather than to use the strap that the binoculars come with. Now, binoculars are expensive, but really buying the cheapest does not make good sense. Cheap binoculars will have inferior lenses that could fall out of alignment and cause you to experience eye problems. And no matter how careful you are when you're out in the field with your binoculars, they can so easily get knocked. The more expensive ones are built to be knock-proof. Now, the really good state-of-the-art, top-of-the-range binoculars could set you back between 25,000 and 75,000 Rand. And if you still need to send your children to university, don't even go there. But if you are in the market for the Rolls-Royce type of binoculars, then look at either Swarovski, Zeiss, or Leica. Research them on the internet and you will see why they cost so much money. Believe me, they are worth every cent, and they do have a lifetime guarantee. In the more affordable range, I would suggest Nikon, Bushnell, or Tasco. There are many other really good brands too. I'm going to send you in the notes the links that you can go on to research these binoculars. And I'll put it up here as well, but don't worry to copy it down because it will be in your notes. The names of the brands that I suggest and everything will be there. Right, so that's binoculars. I hope that you do already have a pair, but if not, it's well worth the investment of getting a decent pair. It's also essential to get a good field guide to help you identify the birds that you see. But which field guide should you buy? There are many really excellent ones on the market, and I'm going to mention just a few and explain how they work. I actually own more field guides than I need, but I won't part with a single one of them. It's a good idea to have at least two. One that shows drawings of the birds and the other that shows the photographs. The drawings tend to give you a little bit more variation in the plumage, and the photographs would possibly only give you a photograph of the male of the species and the female. And sometimes these birds can be very confusing when they're in different plumages. Now, the best and most comprehensive information about Southern African birds you can get in a very big volume of Roberts 7. It's huge and cumbersome, and you wouldn't take that into the field with you. It's more like your family Bible, and as big as one of those big old-fashioned family Bibles as well, but it's lovely to have, and it's lovely if you want to study the birds in the comfort of your home. Now, a book that takes the place of the huge Roberts is the more user-friendly field guide. So when deciding to take a look at, when deciding of which one you would like to have, take a look at this one, as well as the other ones that I am suggesting. My personal favorite is the Sasol Birds of Southern Africa. The one pictured here is the latest version, which I do not own. I own a previous version of that one, and I love it, comfortable with it, and probably won't replace it with the new one. But the new one, I'm sure, is absolutely stunning. Sorry, the frog from the pond has jumped into my throat, it seems. The other field guide I like is Newman's, and that is because of the excellent introductory pages which provide excellent information on birds and how to watch them. It has diagrams of the birds and all kinds of tips for bird watching in a volume like that. Now, Kenneth Newman has passed on, but there is a commemorative revised edition of his field guide, which I do not own, but I'm sure will be absolutely awesome. Then the two photographic guides I would suggest are Ulrich Oberprieler and Birger Celier's The Bird Guide of Southern Africa, which I own, or Ian Sinclair and Peter Ryan's Complete Photographic Field Guide to the Birds of Southern Africa, which our chairperson Priscilla owns, and she finds that excellent too. Now, here I am showing you how the field guides are laid out. Field guides do not list birds alphabetically, but rather according to species and similarities. You'll see that each field guide's layout will not be exactly the same, but most tend to start with the seabirds and end with seed eaters. Newman's has a simple layout with a color-coded tab for each section. So it will just tells you that this is where you will find your ocean birds. That is where you'll find your inland birds. And so he goes on. The mauve is where you will find your raptors. And you would just go to that section and flip the pages across to where the raptors are. And it ends over here with the seed eaters. Sasol's layout is similar, and it also has the color coding. And it is a little bit different in that it has 14 sections to Newman's 12, but it also has the color-coded tabs. It also lists the names of the species in each section. So if you know the species you were looking for, you can find it in those tabs. Then Oberprieler and Celier have simplified their sections to descriptions of the birds rather than species name. So if you see a bird with a decurved bill, you will find them all in the same place and compare them more easily to arrive at the correct ID. So you simply look where he has said he has birds with long straight bills or with long decurved bills, and then it gives you your page number, and that's where you can go to find all the birds that have bills like that. Now, most of the bird guides also will have a quick reference in alphabetical order. And they will list the family names, all in alphabetical order, and the page number next to it. So if you are looking for goshawks, you would find goshawks quickly in alphabetical order, and then you'll go to page 116 and find all the goshawks in that section. So that's quite handy to have. But what I really like is the guides that have the very helpful pictorial chart of all the species in the book with their page numbers beneath. So if you recognize the jizz, you can go to that page, look for the exact subspecies of the bird that you're looking for. So if you see a kingfisher, you know that you go to page 255 and all the kingfishers will be in that section. Very useful. Right, now, in this digital age that we live in, there are apps for absolutely everything, including bird watching. I know some people want to run away from anything electronic, but I can assure you bird apps are an amazing tool to help in identifying and learning about birds. These apps are made specially for your tablet or your phone. There's several available, including the Sassel, the Bird Pro, and the Roberts. If you're interested, research on the internet and see which you think you will prefer. Also ask other bird watchers what they use and why they like them. My personal preference is Roberts, and I will talk about that one here. This is a screenshot of my phone with all my apps on it. And over here, you will see my icon for Roberts. There's good reason why these apps are so popular with bird watchers. It's with you all the time. You don't have to wait to get home if you want to look up a bird you see. And by the time you get home, you might have forgotten what it looks like. But if you can whip it out immediately, you can, it is just makes life so much easier. You see the bird, you whip out your phone and you use the elements to help you ID the bird on the app. It has both drawings and photographs. It's like having two books in your pocket, the one with the drawings and the one with the photographs. The birds will also be shown in different phases of plumage. It has more information about the birds than a regular field guide has. It's like having a huge volume of Roberts in your pocket, but of course so much lighter. Like your field guide, it has the distribution maps to hand too. It also has bird calls that you can play, and this might help you ID your bird if you hear it in the field. But please do not use the app to call birds because that would confuse and stress them. Sometimes a bird might think that he has a competitor in his area, seek him out, can't find him, and might even leave the district and never come back. You can enter information about a bird, which will help you to ID it. And when studying a species, you can easily compare them by using the app. I will show you a bit more about that later. The app has information on birding venues that you could visit and what birds you might find there, because you can call up a specific list for a specific region. for example, for the Strandfontein Nature Reserve, or for the West Coast National Park, for Kirstenbosch and Kruger National Park. There are many that you can call up, and that will only give you the birds that are found in that area. And you can keep your own personal lists on the app as well. Now, this is what would happen if you clicked or tapped to open your app. This is what you would see, Robert's Bird Guide 2, and it has a list of tabs over here, and you can choose which one you want to go to. So I'm going to show you what will happen if you, well, let me first go through. You have two options to seek your birds, Field Guide or Bird Guide, and I'll show you them both later. You have a section you could tap on to create your list. You can tap on My Location, and it will give you the birds in the area that you are presently visiting. If you don't know the bird, you can click on Identification, and it'll ask you to tap on certain bits of information and then give you a list of possible birds that the bird you saw could be. And you can also go and click on birding sites, as I told you earlier, and it will give you lists and information on birds at the various birding sites that you can visit. We are first now going to tap on Field Guide. And when you tap on Field Guide, you will get a list of the birds in their alphabetical order, in the alphabetical order of their family names. And then if you decide you want to have a look at a barbet, you would tap on barbet, and it would bring you to the page where all the barbets are, the family page of barbets. And then if you want to have a look at this particular bird, perhaps that's what you saw out in the field, you would tap on that one, and a menu would come onto the page, and you could decide what you want to do with this menu. For example, you could maybe want to go to the distribution map to see whether the bird occurs in your area, or you could play its sound. You could check to see what different names it has. You could add it to your bird list. There are various options that you can choose. We're going to choose go to the bird's page. So we tap on page, and it brings you to the page of the crested barbet. These are all screenshots, so I can't show you how we go down further, but you would scroll down and read everything about the bird. How to identify it, what habitat it is in, and so on. Then, if you tap on the bird again, it brings down a menu, and you can decide once again what you want to do next. I'm going to choose the distribution map so that I can see whether it is found in the area I'm visiting. And I see, nope, not in the Western Cape, I'm afraid. I'm going to have to go somewhere else. Oops, that was a, I'm sorry, no. That was some finger trouble there. I'm going to have to go somewhere else to see that bird. Right, let's go back to the bird again. Now, instead of tapping on it, I can actually scroll across to see a photograph of the bird. And I'll scroll across again, and I can see the chick in its nest, which is a hole in the tree trunk. And I can scroll across again, and I can come to the distribution map. So there are various ways in which you can use this app, and it's very, very user-friendly. Now we're going to go back to where we opened the app, and this time I'm going to click on Bird Guide. Now in Bird Guide, I don't have the birds in their family name order, but rather sort of like their first name and then their surname. So all birds that begin with A, like an abdom stork, an acacia-pied barbet, I can see. But of course, if I want to see more storks, I'm going to have to go into my search over here, type in stork, and then all the storks will come up. Or I can go to this icon over here and change the way that this is listed, and I can ask the app to please arrange the birds by family name first, surname first, and then first name. That is also an option, and you can change that setting at any time. It depends on your personal preference. Right, we're going to now click on African black duck. And I think I've seen this duck. I think to myself, yes, I saw a duck that looked like that, but I'm not 100% sure. So I click on it again and I get a menu. And on the menu, I can choose similar birds. So I click on similar birds. And there I see African black duck and yellow-billed duck. They're both quite similar. I wonder which one I saw. Was it the African black duck or the yellow-billed duck? I select them both in the checkbox over there. And then I go to this icon over here, which shows the two little birds facing each other. And that's where I can compare the two birds. So if I click on that, click, it will show me the two birds side by side very clearly, and I can have a good look which was the bird I saw. Well, I'm in the Western Cape, so it certainly wasn't the black duck. It was indeed the yellow-billed duck, and I can see the differences. The black duck has orange feet, and the yellow-billed duck has grayish feet. The black duck has a blackish bill, the yellow-billed duck has a yellow bill with a black saddle and a tip on it. The feathers are different, but they do both have the speculum. So they are both ducks, but different types. And that is how helpful my app can be. That's enough about apps. Let's talk about cameras. Many people get into birding because of photography. Birds make marvelous subjects to photograph. And if photography is your passion and your hobby, you probably already have a fantastic camera suitable for capturing our tiny feathered friends. If you are one who simply wants to capture holiday snaps or record the birds you've seen, I can assure you that as wonderful as cell cameras are these days, they're not the ones to use for bird photography. If you want to take photographs of the birds, and it's not essential, then and you're not interested in the effort it takes or have the money to invest in a huge 500mm lens, all is not lost. Modern technology is amazing, and let's welcome the Super Zoom Bridge camera. They can do almost the same job as a Canon D5 with a 500mm lens. I have a Canon PowerShot. I have a Canon PowerShot with a 65 times optical zoom, and it takes awesome photographs. Of course, the quality is not as good as those super expensive cameras, but it is light, you don't have to keep changing lenses, and it gives you the most amazing memory shots. Almost all the photos I use in this presentation are taken with either my Canon PowerShot or with my husband's Panasonic Lumix. My Canon PowerShot has a 65 times optical zoom, and the Lumix has a 60 time optical zoom. These super zoom cameras do it all for the price of between 5,000 and 12,000 Rand. It depends which one you decide to buy. But they are, if you want to use a camera, that is my suggestion. I'm not going to say very much more about cameras. When you hear the word bird, what comes to mind? A small pretty creature with a cheerful song, a mighty eagle soaring in the mountains, a comical duck swimming on a dam, a gull on a rock. All of these images are very different, and birds come in many different shapes and sizes and have a huge variety of habitats. The creator knew what he was doing when he created birds. They are perfectly designed to enable them to soar through the air. They have an uncanny ability to navigate, and how they do it without sophisticated equipment is quite baffling. Most are excellent parents, and those who aren't carefully choose foster parents who they know will treat their abandoned babies as their own. Birds come in different shapes and sizes, and although most can fly, there are several species that can't. So what is the common denominator that makes a bird a bird? Birds are warm-blooded. They have feathers which help them fly and keep them warm, and they also have scales. Birds have 2 legs, and they might walk, hop, wade, or swim. They lay eggs and build nests, some with great skill and others with less awesome design. Some find holes of abandoned nests or abandoned nests of other birds in which to lay their eggs, or they simply lay them in another bird's eggs because they know that they will be taken care of there. They have wings, and some can fly, but some mammals, like bats, can fly too. They have beaks and bills, some in various shapes, and they come in various shapes and sizes, but they do not have teeth. We will talk about how they use their beaks and bills later on in this course. Now, reptiles have scales and lay eggs, but they are cold-blooded. Mammals are also warm-blooded, but they do not lay eggs, and they do not have feathers and scales. So a bird is warm-blooded, it has feathers, and it lays eggs, and it has scales. Don't forget the scales on its legs. I'm just going to briefly show you the anatomy of a bird, as many bird names will include a part of the bird's body. For example, a crowned eagle will be named after its crown. A long-crested eagle, because it has a crest on its crown. Often a bird's name will contain yellow-bellied or red-breasted, chin spot, orange-throated, white-fronted, other descriptions such as long-tailed, yellow-rumped, blue-mantled speak for themselves. And when looking at the bird, you will see why it is called such. Some birds will have spur in the name, and they might have a spur either on their wing or on their leg. Rump often appears, so you need to know where the rump is so that you understand why it's called that. There'll be some mantled birds. And what I suggest is that you look either on the internet, or some bird books do have the diagrams, and get to know the different parts of the bird. Let's just have a look at the underpart, because vent is there. It's just a patch underneath the tail, and you would need to know why. Oh, sorry, finger trouble again. And then also when you are reading your bird book or reading a description of a bird, they will talk about the primaries, the secondaries, the auxiliaries, the breast. So if you get to know where all of those parts are, it is useful in understanding the naming of the birds. I'm not going to go into great detail about that. Bird names can be confusing, and you might wonder why they are called certain names. For example, you might wonder why this bird is called white-fronted when the front of its body is russet. If the word fronted appears in the name, it refers to the front of the head and not the breast or the belly. So as you can see here, this bee-eater has the front of its head is white, and therefore it's called a white-fronted bee-eater. Now, the front of this lapwing is also white, but so is its crown. So it's, in this case, it's going to be named after its crown, a white crowned lapwing, while a similar bird that also has the white front and crown, well, a white front, not really a white crown, is rather named after its wattles. So it's called a wattled lapwing. And these little appendages that hang down here are called wattles. Then they could be named after the color of their breasts or bellies. The crimson-breasted shrike also has a crimson belly, but he's named because of his breast rather than his belly. Whereas the black-bellied bustard also has a black breast, but he's named after his belly. So you can see how he gets his name there. And then this bird has that vent, that little patch under the tail, and it's called a chestnut-vented warbler. Often the word crested appears in a bird name. Take a look at the red crested cormorant. Can you see its red crest? No, because he keeps it hidden until he decides to court a mate, and then it appears in all its glory, making him look quite handsome. You wouldn't think it was the same bird with his crest up. Another confusing thing could be the word lesser and greater. Look at these two swallows. They both got stripes. Now, these pictures are not to scale, but the one is bigger than the other. This one is the bigger bird, and this is the smaller bird. This one has more stripes than that one, and they are called, you would be forgiven for thinking that this one was called the greater striped swallow because he's got more distinct stripes, but in fact he is the lesser striped swallow because he's smaller than the greater striped swallow. So when you hear greater and lesser in a bird's name, it's referring to size. We will be talking about greater and lesser flamingos. And it also doesn't mean that the one is more plentiful than the other. It's simply to do with their size. Then some birds have quite a lot of stripes on their faces, especially the LBJs. And I just want to explain some of the stripes that you will see, because that also comes into the description that you will read in the bird guides or on your apps, or you will hear other birders talking about them. A stripe that goes through the eye is called an eye stripe. This stripe at the top will be your crown stripe. Then you can also have a lateral crown stripe. And then this one, the supercilium, is also often known as the eyebrow, or just simply the brow of the bird. Then a bird will have, some birds will have submoustachial and moustachial stripes. And the bottom one over here, it's a submoustachial stripe, a moustachial stripe and a submoustachial stripe. And this one over here, this bottom one over here, it's called the malar stripe. You can get to know those as well. Let's have a look at an example. He's got an eye stripe through here, and he's got the brow stripe. And because of that brow, that white brow, he is called a white-browed scrub robin. Right, now, you're dressed in all the right gear. You've got your binoculars, you've got your field guide, you've got a list, maybe you've even got an app on your phone, and you're off to go birding. In the beginning, we look at birds and they're all just birds to us. Each one of these is simply a bird. Eventually, you get to the stage when you can distinguish the species. From pelican, suddenly you'll find you know the difference between a pelican and a duck. And now I'm going to help you get from saying, oh, there's a bird, to there's a duck, to which particular duck it is. So how do we look at a bird? We'll go into detail of each of the steps at the after I show you this slide, and then I will teach you a rhyme that will remind you what to observe when you are looking at a bird. First, you must take note of the size and the shape of a bird. Then look at the beak and the bill. Note that the shape and the color and the size of that as well. Take note of its legs and feet. How long are they? What color are they? Are they webbed? Then you look at the markings of the feathers and the color of the feathers. You note where you are seeing it, what kind of habitat. And you take note of what it's doing, its behavior. And we're going to go through each of those one at a time. Shape is a good indication, and some bird guides will have the silhouette at the top of the page, and bird apps have this type of diagram to help you to get the correct identification of a species. So you can see all the different shapes over here and in their different sizes, and it will also show you the shapes of the bills. And if you can recognize more or less what shape of the bird it is, and you click on that, then in your app, different options will come up for you to choose from, or to decide whether you've got the species you think it is. Oops, sorry, finger trouble again. Then you have to note the size. Now, I'm just going to explain how the bird guides give you the size. If you look in your bird book, they'll say that a bird is a certain number of centimeters, a certain length, and that length would be from the tip of the beak to the tip of the tail. And you see this poor bird is on its back, because that's actually how the ornithologists measure a bird when they're studying them. They will have a dead bird and they'll lay it on its back, and they will examine it and measure it in that way. So it's from the tip of the beak to the tip of the tail, gives you its length in centimeters. Now, to help us estimate the size of a bird, it's important to have a frame of reference. So to get to know the size of, so we need to get to know the size of familiar common birds. So a sparrow, for example, is 15 centimeters. A pigeon is 33 centimeters. And a guinea fowl is 55 centimeters. Now, we should all get to know those three common birds. And then when we see birds that we're not too sure what they are, and we're trying to estimate their size, then we could say, look, it's about the size of a sparrow, or a little smaller, or a little bigger. And the same in relation to, no, it was bigger than a sparrow, more the size of a pigeon, or perhaps it was a really big bird the size of a guinea fowl. The next thing to observe are the bills and the beaks. So let's have a look at this bill. This is a long and strong bill, and it won't easily snap, and it's perfectly adapted for diving for food, like this one of the kingfisher. The seed eater has a conical shape to its bill, and it's perfectly adapted to dealing with seeds. The fruit eater, like this parrot, has a very strong bill for getting into the nuts that it might find, or the tough skins of some of the fruit they would find in the wild. The nectar feeder, or the sunbirds and sugarbirds, will have very delicate, long, curved, thin bills, so that they can suck up the nectar in the flowers that they frequent. And it's also curved, slightly curved, and this hoopoe would use that bill to probe into the soil to try and find a nice morsel to eat, a worm or something in the ground. Then your raptors would need very strong bills for tearing their prey. This is an insect-eating bird, and it has it's not particularly strong, but it's very suitable for dealing with eating insects. And then this crow has a very practical bill. It's good for insects, flesh, seeds, fruit, and whatever he eats, because he is an omnivore. The trouble again. Excuse me. Now, we're going to be doing a lot about water birds during this course, so we're going to talk a little bit more about the ducks. Most of the ducks we see in the Western Cape are dabbling ducks. That means they upend and seldom dive down to get food. The bill has rows of fine notches, like you can see in this illustration and in this photograph. That's just inside the bill, and they're called lamellae. The lamellae enable the duck to grip its food tightly and allow water to be filtered out of its beak while retaining the food inside. Dabbling ducks eat fish, mollusks, aquatic plants, seeds, grasses, also small insects and animals found on the water or beneath the water surface. So they've got perfectly adapted bills to deal with those. I'm going to show you an example of a yellow-billed duck. They're dabbling ducks. Flamingos are also filter feeders like ducks, but they've got banana-shaped bills, and they drag them backwards through the water and mud, which comes in at the front of the bill, and then they pump it out at the sides where their lamellae are, and the lamellae trap the shrimp and other small water creatures that they eat. And that is what our greater flamingos look like. Pelicans have amazing bills. They scoop fish and water together and then have to empty the water before they eat the fish. Bigger fish are caught on the hook of the bill and then tossed into the air and caught in the pouch. The pelican folds the flesh neatly when swimming and diving, as you can see here. Sometimes pelicans will fish in groups, and the fish will be driven by the group to shallow water and then caught more easily by the birds. So they're very good at teamwork. Here's your kingfisher. He's a diving bird. He's got a very strong bill. We spoke about that earlier. And there's an example of a pied kingfisher. Then the cormorant is an underwater swimmer. He swims behind the fish, and fish are very slippery. So he's got a hook at the end of his bill, which he uses to grab the fish so that he can't escape. And the bill is also quite strong, so he could even dive before he swims underwater. There is an example of a white-breasted cormorant. The oyster catcher has a bill that he uses like a tool, and it's very strong, and he could use this bill to pry shellfish off the rocks and also to open the shellfish, the mussel. And this is exactly what these oyster catchers are doing on the rocks at Strathspey Beach near where I live. Often on the shoreline, you will find waders running along the beach, poking their bills into the mud, seeking a morsel to eat. They are probing feeders, like this green shank and this common sandpiper. Right, now we'll get to the feet and legs of birds. When you are looking at the bird, note the color and the length of its feet, of its legs and feet, and whether they are bare or feathered. And I'm going to just show you a few. I couldn't resist showing you this one. It's a prehistoric looking foot, and I think you might have guessed that it belongs to the ostrich. And the ostrich is the only bird in the world that's got only 2 toes. And its foot is very well adapted for walking on the ground because, as you know, ostriches do not fly or swim. Ducks and gulls and many swimming birds will have webbed feet for swimming, perfectly adapted to resist the water. Or they might have lobed feet, like coots and grebes, and they would fold those leaf-like toes against the water and swim very quickly that way. Then there are birds that need to balance on the water vegetation, and they will have long, widely spaced toes. This is to distribute their weight evenly, and it would seem as if though they can walk on water, like the African Jacana, moorhen, and swamp hen. Birds that perch need to grip onto branches, so we'll have 3 forward-facing toes and 1 behind. But the woodpecker needs 2 forward-facing and 2 backward-facing so that he can grip on the trunk of trees. Of course, your birds of prey need strong talons with sharp curved claws to grasp and kill their prey. And birds like herons and storks need long legs for wading in the water. And here you see an example of a woodpecker gripping onto the trunk of a tree, gripping in the bark. This one's a bearded woodpecker. It needs those 2 forward and 2 backward facing toes to help him cling to the bark of the tree. This is a bulbul. It's a perching bird, and he's clinging onto the reed with his perfectly adapted toes. And this spotted eagle owl has those talons that are going to aid him in catching some lovely rodents for his dinner. Here we have an African jacana, a perfect example of a bird who needs his long, widely spaced toes to walk on the water vegetation. Now, I'm showing you this picture of the African jacana, but you're unlikely to see him in the Western Cape. But I must just tell you that when I told a class of children that, they would not see this bird. When we got to the venue, one little boy said, "Mrs. Fenwick, I could see a jacana." And I was just about to say, no, my boy, you can't, when I too spotted him. And sure enough, he was there where he shouldn't be, because birds do not read the books. And you just never know where you might see them where they're not supposed to be. This is a Cape Shabbalah, and he's got webbed feet for swimming. This is the red-knobbed coot with its lobed feet. He's perching on a rock there, but they are very well adapted for swimming as well. And the yellow-billed stork with its long legs. And I chose these pictures because they had clear images of their feet and legs for you to see. The next thing to observe is the markings on the birds. The markings, certain terms for the markings are used in your bird guide, so I'd like to just explain those. Streaked, if you hear a bird described as streaked, it means the stripes or streaks are vertical. If it's a spotted bird, it'll have some sort of dot shape. If its markings are barred, the lines go horizontally. So streaked will be vertical, but barred will be horizontal. And quite often birds will have barred tails. So take note of their tails too, especially some birds of prey. Blotched is not spotted or streaked, but, well, it has blotchy markings. And mottled, not as blotchy. And then scalloped or scaled. Speak for themselves, they like curved bars or curved stripes. Then the color. In your app, they will ask you, if you are trying to describe a bird, to identify a bird, is the color all black or mainly black? Is it mainly black and white? Is it brown or grayish brown? Is it rufous or orange rufus? Is it green or mainly green? Or is it mainly red? Could also be, yes, blue. You could also get blue on a bird, various colors. So that's looking at the markings and the color. Then you must note where you see the bird. Did you see it amongst fynbos in the mountains, or in the veld, in the forest, near coastal water, near inland water, in your garden? Then you must observe the behavior of the bird. What do you see it doing? Does the bird display or call during flight? Perhaps it suddenly drops down from the air. Does it soar like most birds of prey, using the air currents? Seabirds tend to glide. Kingfishers will hover. Does it fly fast on hovering wings or slowly with regular wing beats? Is its flight bouncy or dipping? Watch the tail and wings on landing. Does its tail wag up and down or flick from side to side? Does it raise its tail after landing? Does it cock its tail upward? How does it go about foraging? Does it probe for worms or turn over leaf litter? Does it feed from flowers or in the bark of a tree? Does it run, hop, or walk on the ground? And is the bird shy, or is it confiding? Some birds are curious and they will come out from where they're hiding to see who you are. That's a confiding bird. Others are shy and will hide behind the foliage in trees. Right, now that's quite a lot to remember. So I'm going to teach you the little rhyme that my friend, the legendary Heather Howell, who has done many birding courses for the Cape Bird Club, and this is what she taught me. First of all, I'm going to take a deep breath and sigh once. And I'm going to take a breath again and sigh twice. So now we've got 2 sighs, and we begin the rhyme with the sighs. The sighs, the beak, the legs and feet, the markings and the hue, the habitat you find it in, and what you see it do. The sighs, the beak, the legs and feet, the markings and the hue, the habitat you find it in, and what you see it do. And this rhyme will be in your notes so that you can learn it and not forget it. Now I'm going to go through some of the bird vocabulary that you will have come across when you are in the field with other birders, particularly, or when you're reading it in a book, in a description in your bird guide. Your field guide will have a glossary section, and you'll find many more terms than these mentioned there. Albinistic refers to a bird that lacks normal pigment and has paler feathers. A brood parasite is a bird who lays its eggs in another bird's nest. Crepuscular means the bird is active at dawn and dusk, which is just before sunrise and just after sunset. Conspecific birds are of the same species. If a bird is endemic to an area, excuse me, it means it isn't found anywhere else. It has a limited range. Melanistic means a darkness of plumage resulting from abnormal development of black pigment. An alternate but permanent color that differs from the norm of a species is called its morph. You get different morphs of tawny eagle, for example, from quite light blonde to dark brown. A passerine is a bird that habitually calls or sings, and it has normal feet. That means it has three toes forward and 1 back, so it perches. And a lot of the birds that you see in your garden are passerines. A pelagic seabird is one who frequents the open sea as opposed to one who is on the shore. A raptor is a bird of prey that hunts and kills other creatures for food. A bird like an avocet has a recurved bill. In other words, it curves upwards and not downwards like the decurved bill of the ibis. And a speculum is an iridescent patch on the wings of some birds. Usually ducks have speculums. Right, now we're going to just quickly go through a little quiz to see whether you have remembered anything that I've spoken about this evening. If you have a piece of paper and a pen or a pencil, you just need to write the number of the question and match it to the letter of the picture. I'll go through it twice. Do you know which bird has a long, thick and sharp bill for spearing fish? Write down 1 and next to it choose A, B, C, D or E. Number 2, do you know which bird has a long, thin and curved bill for probing and sucking up nectar? Number 3, Do you know which bird has a bill with a hook at the end for holding on to a slippery fish? Number 4, do you know which bird has a wide flat bill with ridges on the inner edges called lamellae? Number 5, do you know which bird has a very sharp hooked beak for tearing flesh? I'll go through them again quickly. Do you know which bird has a long, thick and sharp bill for spearing fish? Number 2, do you know a bird with a long, thin and curved bill for probing and sucking up nectar? Number 3, do you know a bird that has a bill with a hook at the end for holding onto a slippery fish? And which bird, number 4, has a wide flat bill with ridges on the inner edges? And number 5, do you know a bird with a very sharp hooked beak for tearing flesh? If you are able to name those birds, you can give yourself an extra point. Here come the answers. Number 1, the bird with the long sharp bill for spearing fish is a kingfisher. And in this case, here he is the pied kingfisher. I had a little moment there. Then do you know a bird with a long, thin and curved bill for probing and sucking up nectar? It's the sunbird, and this is an amethyst sunbird, E. Number 3, the bird with a hook at the end for holding on to slippery fish is B, your cormorant, and this one is a white-breasted cormorant. Number 4, a bird with a wide flat bill with ridges on the inner edges is, of course, the duck, and this is the yellow-billed duck. And number 5, a bird with a sharp hooked beak for tearing fish is an eagle. For tearing flesh, is an eagle, and this is a fish eagle. Right, some more questions. Do you know which bird has long legs for wading? Once again, if you write the name of the bird, it's just its family name will do. That's an extra point. Do you know which bird has long legs for wading in water? A, B, C, D, or E? Number 2, which bird has lobed feet for swimming? Number 3, which bird has widely spaced toes for walking on water vegetation? Number 4, which bird has 2 toes facing forward and 2 back for clinging to the bark of a tree? And number 5, which bird has webbed feet for swimming? Go through that very quickly again. Number 1, which bird has long legs for wading? Number 2, which bird has lobed feet for swimming? Number 3, which bird has widely spaced toes for walking on vegetation? Number 4, which bird has 2 toes facing forward and 2 back for clinging to the bark of a tree? And number 5, which bird has webbed feet? And the answers are, number 1, the long-legged bird is a heron. This is a Goliath heron. The lobed feet for swimming is a coot. This is a red-knobbed coot. The bird with widely spaced toes that seems to be walking on water is a swamp hen. This is an African swamp hen. The bird with the two toes facing forward and two back is, of course, the woodpecker. And this one is a bearded woodpecker. And the bird that has webbed feet for swimming is a duck, and that is the black duck. Thank you, everybody. That is the end of my presentation.